Well, did you miss us? Did you miss me? Folks, I am so sorry. By the way, welcome to the Hagmann Report. It's Tuesday, August 18th, 2026. I just want to tell everyone, apologize to everyone. The quick and dirty on this, our 2 week absence, it was my fault, essentially. We had a meeting with the supporters on the first Sunday night, and I had scheduled last week off, and I made that announcement. And I was going to make that announcement the week before, and then, well, things happened, and some personal things happened. Nothing bad, just I had to manage. Okay, so I did that the previous week. The last week, which was a planned off anyway, I did something else. And I want to tell you that because, man, I'm going to tell you right now, you folks are going to be just blown away. All right. I spent a lot of time with Steve Quayle last week. Not in his presence, but telephonically and virtually. A long time. Several times over the course of the week. And wow, we're planning something, and it's going to be big. And the reason it's going to be important too, and the reason I say that we're planning something and it's going to be important is because I had the chance last week to look into a couple of issues that he was talking about, and I really didn't 100% understand. Right? You know, I mean, sometimes, Steve can tell you something, and I love the guy, right? And I told him this too. You can explain something sometimes, but it goes over my head, and then you get frustrated because I don't understand. And, so I get it. I understand how, frustration builds in somebody. So as we spoke, I said, look, here's what I found in terms of really the bigger picture of events through constant research and not saying anything, to anyone, just digging deep and then being quietly in the background. And I watched a lot of numerous replays of podcasts and broadcasts. And to see what people were talking about. The big ones, the medium-sized ones, the small ones, the political, the religious, all of them. The 30-minute or the shorts. The real short one, they're called shorts, not briefs, boxers. No, you know what I'm talking about, right? So numerous ones of those, but mostly broadcasts, whether they were quick hits like 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, some 4 hours. And I asked a lot of questions with people you would know. Made some calls, and I don't want to say interviewed because it was more casual than an interview, but the questions were interview-like. And I want to pose this opening question to all of you right now. Those joining me live on Rumble, thank you for doing that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being in the chat. And please keep the chat classy. No personal attacks. Right? We're all adults here. But I'm going to ask everyone in the chat right now a couple of questions. And you don't have to answer, but number one, what do you think the most important message to get across to, number one, Americans, number two, the West, and number three, the world. Maybe I have that backwards, but you get the idea, the crux of that question. What's the most important message? And then the second part of that, to the same people, the same three sections, America, the West, and the world. What are the biggest threats? Now, I suppose the first two could be more readily defined. You know, the West or the America and the West could be more readily defined. And the third question I have to all of you, who do you listen to or who do you watch and why? All right. Is it strictly for the news and headlines? Or is it for something a little bit deeper? And kind of a subset to that, what is your tolerance level? Okay. When I say tolerance level, I know people who can sit and watch a 4-hour broadcast. And it depends on the topic too. I know people who get bored after 15 minutes, which I get that as well. But I think it all is determined by what's being discussed. All right, and I just want to take a moment here and look at the responses in the chat, because your opinion is important to me. If you're here, your opinion is important. Somebody had a loss here, right? Steeler's mom. I'm sorry for your loss. Steeler's mom, is everything okay? But like you're going to respond to me, right? over the air. I forgot how to do this. Okay. Well, thank you. You watch and listen because you trust me. Thank you. Thank you. Islam, get rid of it. Frog Lady 2009, right on. Steeler's mom, stop Islam, the biggest threat. The word of God is the will of God. Okay, okay. Red River Patriot, thank you. Yes. About it, again, it's almost like you're hearing one side of the conversation. It was my absolute stupid move for not posting something saying, hey, we're off for 2 weeks. And do you know something? I did not think about that until today. Which, I don't know. Maybe I'm just old and senile. I don't know. Thank you, Red River Patriot. Yes, but that will happen if that does happen again. Yeah, but my intent was good, to announce last week off. Okay. Islam and Noahide loss. Okay, very interesting, and I can see how you're equating those two. Okay. Our debt is a big threat. Thank you, our Casper Shaw. So, Frog Lady, really don't listen to many podcasts lately. They're all slanted. Boy, that's true. Okay. Islam is a threat. I like longer programs that also have a positive message and believe in the Bible. Thank you, Red River Patriot. That was something I was looking at too. And Frog Lady makes a good point in the chat here. I mainly listen to you guys, thank you, when you're on. But I actually do my research too. And that's something that I think is lacking. And I just want to say something about that. There are many people out there who have opinions. And, we used to be a society where we would be able to talk, have our opinions, and have disagreements. and the other person would feel or say, you know, I don't agree with you, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to for you to say it. That's gone today. That's a big issue. There's a reason why I'm asking all of these questions in this somewhat interactive fashion. There's a reason for this. And yes, it has to do with the bigger picture. PR, thank you about being concerned. Again, I'm jumping around in the chat and a little bit behind, so forgive me if I. Jody Janey, feeling very fearful for the future of the U.S. I get that as well. Okay. I don't mean for there to be dead air. It's bad for the audio part here. You know, somebody was talking about cancer in the chat, and there are some very promising clinical trials, of course, using ivermectin and what is that from the other non-lethal treatment option. And Big Pharma is fighting that, of course, as you all know that, and we all, as we age, or even with even now, with younger people, because of what they're doing to us, our food and everything else, we're fighting cancer earlier. We're fighting other diseases much earlier. We're not getting nutrition. I mean, everything's. I'm going to tell you, we're under attack, and people don't talk about that. So, kind of, sort of, that's an important topic to talk about as well, and to make sure people know. I mean, I watched my father die of cancer. I watched my father-in-law die with dementia, but from those related medical issues. And I'm going to tell you something. He was one of the smartest men I knew, wisest. We'd be walking down the road and walking. I remember back in, like, I don't know, 80s, 90s. We were walking on a street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a park area, and this is about my deceased father-in-law. And he looked at a tree and he said, or I said, I wonder what that kind of tree is that? And man, without hesitation, he told me the kind of tree it was. He was telling me all about this kind of tree. He showed me the leaves and, the bark. And I got an education. I thought, well, that was kind of a one-off. Then he did to another tree when I asked. The point is, just a marvelous source of information. And we've all, two things about that. I think we all need people like that in our lives to be able to guide us. And I think we're losing that. I think we've lost a lot of that. And the second thing is, of course, the bigger issue, or as with my father-in-law, to see a man of that intelligence. And by the way, he worked in a factory. He wasn't a botanist or what do you call it, arborist, or anyway. But he could identify stuff like that, or even things that you wouldn't think about. But okay, I digress. And of course, his passing and such. Boy, that was tough back then, to see a man of that mental caliber and just kind of suffering. But see, I believe that right now we've got the ability to if not reverse it, certainly stop the onset of dementia. I believe that. And of course, as mentioned in the chat, cancer. But I didn't mean to digress there. But I think it's important. Okay. By the way, diesel fuel is mentioned in there. See how far back I am? Yeah, the fuel itself is going to go way up. Okay, thank you, Sarah Westall. I do as well. Redacted, absolutely. Owen Schroyer. Um, yep, I do as well. Now, when I say I do, it's not like a constant. You can only, I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. But again, please understand, folks. There's a point to all this. So the three questions I had: the biggest threat, who you listen to, and essentially what your tolerance level is, and what was the other one? You and the other one. All right. Del Bigtree, yeah. Dr. Dave Dronda, you know what? Man, I should have him back. Interesting guy. Thank you for. Oh no, your wife has blood cancer. Danny Boy Smith, I'm going to tell you what. Please find the alternative care doctors. You know, the doctors that that are treating cancer, and you'll be in my prayers. She'll be in our prayers. All right. Boy. Okay, so again, I don't mean for there to be dead air on the audio. I'm just kind of going through the lack of water. Okay, very interesting. And that's a good concern with the data centers, and you have to ask yourself, here's why I'm asking all of this, and this is a perfect example. This is an absolute perfect example. Lack of water. And this is how my mind works, just so I can explain to you. And then from there, we can together address all of your concerns in the manner I think there's a couple of simple ways to address all of your concerns, to give you the product, show, an episode or whatever, episodes, plural, of what you're looking for, what would help you, a positive message too, addressing all of this. But let's take the issue of a lack of water. And that's from Zendej. I'm sorry, man. I don't know how to pronounce that. So here's how I would look at that. Why do we have a lack of water? Is it because there's too many people? Is it because why? Why would you fear that? Or why would that be a concern to you? Or why would that be a threat? Well, it's a threat. I mean, 3 days without water, you're gone, obviously. But what's causing the lack of water? And you might say, well, drought. All right. Now, we've lived on planet Earth for how many thousands of years? Have we survived droughts before? Yes, we have. So what's different about this time? Again, I'm explaining to you how I approach this, or a problem like this, or a question like this. Is this something brand new? No. Okay, so have we had droughts like this before? Well, maybe these are a little bit different, and some are being attributed to what? Climate change, or some bogus money-driven problem, right? When you have to ask yourself, what about weather manipulation causing the lack of rain or lack of fresh water? Right? You get the idea, right? Or how about the intrusion of data centers, which allegedly need all of this water, allegedly, right? Okay, let's think this through. So the next question I have after that is, well, why do we need the data centers, and do they really need that much water? Or perhaps, if you live in California, why is there a diversion of water? A political thing, right? Is there another agenda at play? That's how my mind works. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but I want to get to the root of the problem. I want to get right down to the base of the problem. All right. So, and thanks for being honest, BR 7562. I can tolerate your show for about 2 hours as a general rule. And thank you for that. Thank you, number one, for being able to tolerate it. Number two, thank you for being honest. And I gotta say, sometimes I turn my show off. Just saying. Our Casper, sometimes the news can be depressing. You know what? 100%. And you know what, though? You need the basic scoop, right? In other words, you tune into programs like this to find out what's going on. Maybe, I don't know. But you don't necessarily need a constant bombardment. You don't need 5 video clips of a fight at the fair in speaking of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. You don't need 5 video clips of some, fight there, the fights there at the fair to prove that point. But yet that's what we see. And then on top of that, we and I'm guilty of this too, and I've done this too. We'll play back-to-back clips of just wow, depressing stuff. I mean, it's news, it's out there, but we have to drive that home in that fashion. And what does it do to you, or what does it do for you? In other words, last week and really all of the throughout the last couple of months, especially, I've really asked myself, how can I best serve an audience? How can I best serve you? And what can I provide you? What do you like? What don't you like? That kind of stuff. All right. And you notice I did not mention, well, I briefly mentioned the word of God, salvation and such, because that is an important thing. Ultimately, eternity is a long time. Just saying. That's important. All right, I'm going to get back here. Glenn Beck, so pretty much all of the people that you've mentioned, let's see here. Jewel 25, especially covering the Constitution and American history. His museum is epic. I'm going to tell you something. Do I have that in today's show notes? Let me check. Because I do, I think. Let me see here. Yeah, I do. Okay. We're going to touch on that too. There's something. Harp. Thank you, BR. Harp. Heat dome. Poison the water supply. Yep. Okay. Again, I'm reading the chat, not necessarily in any kind of order. Incompetent government. Is it incompetence, or is it deliberate, or is it both? It's kind of funny because one of the notes I wrote down here for today. We, collectively and individually, we must be able to challenge our own positions on issues. I'm talking about political, I'm talking about even philosophical. But I'm not, obviously, the non-compromising issues of Christianity, no. The core, the salvation issue, we cannot compromise. But the other issues that we talk about, I think we have to be able to challenge our own positions in order to make sure that, we're not kind of off a little bit. It's when I was doing investigations, and still am on a consulting basis, it would be required for us, for me to challenge. Look, okay, I found something here as an investigator. I'm looking at a case. This is what I think, and you have to challenge that. So, from an investigative position, also too, if you're planning, and so on the criminal side of things, you have in investigations. Okay, this is important because it's relevant to what we're talking about. In the private sector, as an investigator in the private sector, and when I say that, I'm not talking about somebody working domestic cases or whatever. No. I'm talking about a fraud investigator hired by an insurance company, top Fortune 100 insurance company, or a death investigator, because insurance companies, back in the 80s, I worked for an insurance company as a death investigator. And what that is simply, if perhaps somebody has a million, at that time, $1 million policy on someone, whether it be a corporate executive, key man insurance, and suddenly that insured individual dies suspiciously or dies. We know the manners and causes of death are different. Okay, the manners and causes of death. Sometimes you don't know the cause of death, but you know the manner. But anyway, but I went off on a tangent there. But you'd have to challenge your own positions. You'd have to think at that time as a fraud investigator and as a death investigator specifically. You had to challenge your own positions, and the reason I had to do that is because when you get called into court, and believe me, in that realm, you do. It happens. You have to be able to defend your position. You have to be able to defend your findings. You have to be able to do all of that. And so, at the onset of an investigation, you have to think not like a prosecutor in the legal realm, but yes, I guess you do have to think, but you have to think like a defense attorney would. It's really important. So I think a lot of times, as it applies to what we're talking about, you and I are talking about right now, it's just my feeling and my opinion that a lot of times we lock into a position and we don't challenge that position. And you might think, well, I don't have to because I'm right. Okay, that's where, yeah. Again, applying that to the investigative realm, you think you're right, and then you get on the stand. Okay, you do this one time, and that's all you need, especially in the investigative realm, in the when you're testifying, because man, you will get chewed up, and poof, wow. So you have to be able to look at all aspects of an issue. Because, and I'll just say this for an example, in the context of the questions I asked, some people will say, well, the Jews right now are the problem, the Jews in government. That's the most critical threat that we face, the dual citizenship, the Jews. Okay, right there, those are two different issues. Jews and dual citizenship, or just as Jews in Israel, they're two separate issues. This brings into the topic of today. And you might think, well, what the hell? What are you talking about? You're just rambling. No, I don't know. How many people are familiar with the term? Some people pronounce this differently. Ponerology. Ponerolgy. Ponerology. I'll wait. I'm curious. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the definition is. Ponerology this was that term and the intent or the actual ponerology as a practice and was developed is really from the Greek. The name ponerology is from the Greek, and it's the study of evil. Now, there are numerous major subdivisions of the nature of evil, the origin of evil, and evil in general. Okay, you can subdivide ponerology. Ponerology, I guess, from my research, you could just summarize it as the doctor or the study of the doctrine of the bad. Now, Nietzsche, Carl Nietzsche, interestingly, got heavy into that. Not Nietzsche, but Carl Nietzsche. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Nitzsch. But the concept of ponerology being subdivided is interesting in itself, the study of evil. And then there's something called political ponerology that was popularized by Polish psychiatrist Andrzej Loba. I practice saying this name, and I'm not going to get it right. Lobachevsky. Political ponerology advocated using the fields of psychology and theology and psychology, sociology, and philosophy and history to account for things like war, stuff that we're seeing right now, ethnic cleansing, and all the bad stuff. So you've got ponerology and political ponerology. And why is this important? Because it goes back to my original question. What the heck? Why would you tune in? Why are you watching this show? What shows do you watch? Why do you watch them? And how long can you tolerate them for? And what is the greatest threat? I think when we're talking about this, the greatest threat is pure evil, is demonic in nature. That's the greatest threat. Outside of us not seeking and asking for, and forgive my clumsiness with salvation, okay, or seeking or getting salvation. The biggest threat I see is the evil that we face. And that evil, like the term ponerology, can be subdivided into pretty much all of the things that you guys mentioned. All of the threats, all of the concerns that you have, the infiltration by Islam, the ape-like behavior of people, the loss of decency, dignity, this infusion of evil. That's a big thing. But I think, again, I don't want to be like everyone else where we're talking and we're showing, for example, the stuff that's going on that went on in Milwaukee at the fair. Okay, you can show 5 different video clips, and you can say, well, okay, that's a problem, obviously. The lack of accountability that by the peer to the people that are causing this problem, why they're like that, the lack of accountability, on and on. We could subdivide all of that and dig down. Each one is a problem, right? But what is the bottom line problem, as Steve would say? And that is the infusion of evil. And something that I'll just term the Luciferian effect. I want you to spend your time. Hopefully I can provide some level of edification. I can provide some occasional entertainment by my faux pas. I can provide information and, again, education inspiration, a positive message while delivering what's important in it through a wider lens, but also a sharper lens. That's what I want to do, and that's what I spent here the last week doing and talking with Steve. And Steve and I, again, in case you're joining us late, Steve and I do have, or joining me late, I should say, Steve and I do have some things planned that I am telling you answer so many questions. But you know what? The research has been so extensive. Wow. I'll tell you more later on that. But right now, all of your concerns, I kind of want to address the broader concept of this, because I want you to, tonight, hopefully at the end, I'm gonna reserve a couple of minutes at the end of this broadcast. I want you to tell me. I ask you just to do me one favor. Stick with me. Tell me at the end if this not only makes sense, but if you walk away feeling that you made a good investment with your time by joining me tonight. I really want you to do that. And I want you to be brutally honest. I want you to say, you know what, you're a crappy talker. Not a problem. Or your communication lacks. Don't get personal, okay? But be constructive. But be frank, be honest, be forthcoming. All right. It's all of this, and we look around, we're seeing evil, and we see a lot of people dancing around this topic. One of the issues that I did speak about in our monthly supporters meeting was expanding our base of platforms. And through, as I watched the different broadcasts and I watched the numerous people, audio, but primarily video, YouTube, and other video platforms and audio platforms, okay? One of the most common things I saw was this submission to news speak, this submission to or compliance with this certain rules, unwritten rules, but hey, for monetary concern, so you don't get deplatformed. But I spoke about expanding our platforms, and I thought, I asked a question. I'll ask you guys, those people who weren't there Sunday. We've been invited back. I've been invited back to join YouTube. What do you think? As an addition. Steve and I were talking, we were talking about this, about the different platforms and the penetration and the demographics. And we spoke about a lot of stuff in addition to what I mentioned before. And you know something? I can't comply with that. Well, first of all, I'm not going to change I'm not going to go along with new words or made up words. Okay. And I've mentioned these before, unalive. I'm not going to say unalive. I'm not going to say SA for rape or sexual assault. I'm not going to conform to that. There's really two reasons. Only two. It's just two. That broadcasters or podcasters will do this. The first reason is they don't want to be demonetized by that platform, specifically YouTube. In other words, they'll throw up 20 ads, inline ads. And frankly, if you say rape or Islam is evil or Islam is a threat, you're not going to make any money. But if you really get into it, and we saw this, if you start saying, well, you know what, that COVID shot, that injection, death jab, slab jab, whatever you want to call it, you don't do that. Then you get deplatformed. So you have two choices. Don't talk about it or get in line. I don't like either. I don't want to compromise. And it reminded me of truth can't be silenced. Truth shouldn't be silenced. And equally bad, maybe even worse, is when you go along with certain rules by not saying raped, by abbreviating it for the sake of money and for the sake of a platform. I thought long and hard about that. And you know I've been thinking about that. Same on X, when suddenly, and again, you might be very, would you shut up about this already? I can't. Because how can we win or how can we fight a battle by not by succumbing to this news or newspeak, by succumbing to these arbitrary rules? How can we effectively fight against evil? We can't. I'm not going to put an asterisk or whatever symbol for a letter on X or any other platform. Ain't happening. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say rape, I'm going to say sexual abuse, I'm going to say Islam is evil, if that's germane to the subject, or whatever that case might be. We've lost that ability. And why have we lost that ability to talk like that? We've surrendered it. We have allowed them to take it from us. And who are them? Well, the people you'll see momentarily. But at the end, as I mentioned, I want to see if this resonates with you. All right. But down that line, reaching a younger demographic, or a little broader demographic, not going to do that not going to do that by compromising what we're saying and doing. Just saying. Because, hey, I don't care about the monetization, but why create a platform only to be deplatformed? Not going to happen. Which is why we're here. And I'd much rather be here with 300 people, or 400 people, or 200 people, or 50 people than on YouTube with 5,000. I'm just saying. Okay. Now to tie things together. Finally, right? And forgive me, I don't know who mentioned about the Constitution. Well, I'm going to address this real quick, because this is a subpart of the issue I was talking, or this, I shouldn't say subpart. This is one aspect of a threat. Hey, our Constitution is being threatened. I don't know how many people saw the DSA conversation about the Democratic Socialists of America. Their platform is, part of it is they hate the Constitution. They want to get rid of the Constitution. The communist slash socialist in America, they're going after the Constitution. Islam is going after the Constitution. That's a big threat. So, okay. Video 4, cut 4. This very interesting. This brings back Charlie Kirk. I want you to take a watch this clip. It's 2 minutes 19 seconds. The guy was spot on about the Constitution, and really what's important. The Constitution in this country was built not by these third world imported people, of which we had 30 million imported under Biden, Obama, Harris, Mayorkas, and so on. By the way, why is it that no one is talking about Mayorkas? Have you asked yourself that? Well, you hear all of this, Fauci, but you know who you don't hear being talked about? Mayorkas. Why? Just asking. All right. We're going to go to cut 4. This is about the Constitution, and this kind of merges a couple of topics, are the structure of really America, as well as the importance of how our society needs to, why Islam is not compatible, why we need to be a Bible-believing country, why we need to be a country of God-worshiping, Jesus-believing, saved by the blood people. It kind of merges all of that in 2 minutes. Watch this, cut 4.
It's always a good time right now for a good old Charlie Kirk clip. By the way, this clip just shows this guy's brain was a computer.
Our country was founded on common law because the Declaration only refers to God 4 times in the Constitution. It doesn't refer to God at all. And it only articulates the structure of government.
So first of all, remember that we were a collection of states and colonies. And you need to read the state constitutions before anything else. 13 out of 13 required a declaration of faith. In almost every single one of the original state constitutions, they had, I profess Lord and Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Secondly, 55 out of 56 of the original signers of the Declaration were Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. You asked about common law. Well, let's go to 3 principles of common law. Presumption of innocence, due process, and jury of your peers. All 3 are biblical principles. And all wrapped into the ultimate biblical principle that you shall not favor justice if you are rich or poor, which is in Leviticus 19, which is the idea of blind justice, which is incorporated also in the New Testament ideal, neither slave nor Greek nor Jew, you are all one in Jesus Christ, which you get the idea of human equality. These are all biblical ideas, but more importantly than that, they say that God was only mentioned 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. Well, that's a big deal. John Adams famously said the Constitution was only written for a moral and religious people. It was wholly inadequate for the people of any other. The body politic of America was so Christian that our form and structure of government was built for the people that believed in Christ our Lord. One of the reasons we're living through a constitutional crisis is that we no longer have a Christian nation, but we have a Christian form of government, and they're incompatible. So you cannot have liberty if you do not have a Christian population.
People call us a democracy. The United States is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. But the reason that we've had a democracy for a long time, and it's worked until recently, is because you talk about, okay, theocracy just means who's the highest authority. Well, honestly, the reason that it's worked for so long is until maybe the last 30 years, the populace was very, very, very predominantly Christian, or at least possessing a Christian worldview and ethical set of assumptions. And so it worked. It's like if you try to put software that into something that's incompatible with the hardware. If you start trying to insert a secular populace into a Christian hardware, like this whole thing was built on Christian hardware, it's like, bro, it breaks.
Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. That was a lot of information. The links, I promise you, will be posted at hagmannpi.com, but under tonight's show title. But does that make sense to you? It makes sense to me. And Kirk said it a heck of a lot better than I could ever have said it. Again, during Steve and I, when we were talking last week, and again, we probably spent, just a full day, like 24 hours, talking about different issues and talking about the most important things that we need to convey. And I'll tell you this, I told him, I said, Steve, you gotta stay linear. And he said, Doug, you gotta say, you can't be stuttering all the time. But we did it. You know what? Here's the thing. Iron sharpens iron. And we did it with the understanding that we both wanted to help each other. And that was some great, great conversation. And the other part, most important part, was he challenged my position on a few things. my beliefs on a few things. And I challenged his. And that time that we spent and the conclusions that we came up with that led to additional research that will bring, and I promise you, we're planning a number of things in the near term. When I say near term, I don't know how this is going to play out, but there are a number of things that we're planning that will address some of the biggest threats, some of the most important information you've ever heard. It's going to be mind-blowing. Blew my mind. Of course, that, Now, somebody else had mentioned, again, ponerology, the study of evil, and then political ponerology, a subset of that. It pretty much covers all of the topics the threats that everyone posted in the chat. The threat against the Constitution. Now, video 3. We talk about Islam, right? We talk about that. The threat of Islam. And understand this is not, we're not, and everyone understands. I'm sure everyone listening to this. Now, if you just happen upon this broadcast, you might say, okay. But Islam is not a religion. It's not. You can define it as you might, but one thing it's not is a religion. It's being used as a tool by the evil in power or by the nitwits, either evil or nitwits in power, to advance a specific agenda. But what's that agenda? Because we all talk about it. What's the agenda? Well, there are multiple agendas. But let's get into cut 3 here, because there's some other good parts, other good videos here I want you to take a look at. And again, at the end, I want you to see how all of this connects, despite my rambling. Here's cut 3. This is important. Cut 3. It's from the Rare Foundation.
A record 230 Muslim Americans now hold elected office across the United States, according to the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR. 4 Muslims serve in Congress, which is also a record. In November 2025, 42 Muslim candidates won elections across 9 states. They included 5 mayors and several state and local officials. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is among the prominent Muslim office holders. CAIR says Muslim political representation has grown steadily.
Elections where only 16% of registered voters will vote in them. Anytime voter turnout is low and the margins are slim, we have the ability to call the shots.
Tonight on Rare TV, while Americans continuously stay home on Election Day, a highly organized Muslim voting machine is treating our elections like an open-door invasion.
Can you pause there? And you can just slide it over. And let me address something here, because this is important to me. And I think it is important to you. And I can almost hear, I didn't look at the chat, but I can almost hear people saying, elections, huh? So people staying home on Election Day is the problem. That's what I'm hearing, right? And that's what's getting Muslims into office. And they're getting into office not to assimilate and be compatible, as you well know, but to take over and to conquer. But why? It's because you're staying home on Election Day. No. Because let's say you had a massive voter turnout, kind of like the Biden level turnout of 81 million, right? Votes. What does that tell you? It tells you that our election system is broken. So you want us to use a broken tool, the election system, and you think Nothing against the RAIR Foundation, RAIR Foundation, but is that really going to work? If the election system is broken, if we don't have, same day voting, in person paper ballots, except for the military, if we don't have, if that's not fixed, what is what's been accomplished? Because they could tweak the vote at the precinct, which is why I'm not invited back as an election observer. Okay. I just thought it was important for me to observe the counting. When they say you can't stand there, well, then I can't observe. My certificate says here I have to observe, and I need to observe. Well, you can't do it from there. You can see. Well, no kidding. But see, the point is the system is broken. So, yeah, not only was I not invited back, but, there was a little incident, shall we say. And just saying, I wasn't going to leave without a fight. All right. It's deeper than that. It's that, but it's deeper than that. It's the lie. It's the basis of the lie of Islam. It's people believing that Islam is a religion and is compatible. And it is, yes, it is people staying home on election day. But then you ask me, or perhaps you would put it back at me and say, well, you just said the system is broken. Why should we exercise our right to vote? And that is, when you do that, if you are of age, of sound mind, look, you should go cast your vote in person on the day of the election. You should call out the problems that you see. You should be, this is how we were brought up. And even though the system might be rigged, we're not going to change anything by staying out of this system or by not voting. We're not going to change anything. When we go there to vote, we can point out the irregularities and stay there and say, you know what? I ain't leaving. And if more people did that, I don't know. Would that make a difference? I think it would to me. We'll go ahead and put that full screen. Go for another minute, though, because there is some value to this. And then the entire, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, we'll go for another, maybe a minute and a half. This video segment, this video clip is valuable, all right? Because it does point out some very important issues. Again, the sub-issues of the larger issue. You might say, well, you might ask me, why aren't you talking about the bigger issue? Well, we're talking about the sub-particles of the bigger issue, but we got to understand the various, and this is another thing hang on one second, this is another thing that I came to realize. I remember, and this still is like this, a lot of people say, well, that topic is a distraction, or this topic is a distraction, or this issue is a distraction. That was used with the Epstein files. This is a distraction from the Epstein files. Okay. Everything's not I agree, but everything is not a distraction. There are, in my view anyway, there are key issues that need to be discussed. This is one of them. This isn't the only one. This is one of them. And then the voting problem, but the infusion of evil, because it's my personal opinion, belief, and frankly, based on my research investigation, I did surveillance, I did investigation of why these many, I'm not going to say all, but many of these Muslims are here, is to conquer this country, not to assimilate. Based on my research, investigation, surveillance back in the day, you know the story. And there are many in our government that allegedly serve the Constitution who are not just allowing it, but promoting the destruction of the very, very thing that they claim to serve. We'll go for another minute or so on this, and then we'll continue, because I think all of this is important. Go ahead.
Figured it out. Low turnout plus their block voting equals total control. They've run the numbers, and low turnout is their hunting ground. School boards, city councils, congressional seats, every seat where a few thousand dedicated block votes can flip the outcome.
State-level politics is more effective, and Muslims can have a greater impact because the number of votes you need is much less.
At the municipal level, at the state level, and even at the congressional level.
Really? Okay.
100%.
Can you tell me how?
Yeah. Congressional District 11 in Virginia, we have 54,000 registered Muslims. Your win number is going to be less than 20,000. Muslims can go and put a Muslim in there.
So this is the time for Muslims to be more engaged in their communities. A year ago, we organized at a Muslim community in Malden, and we started an organization called Engage Malden. And what we did is we empowered the Muslim community to go and vote and be involved in the political system in the city. And what we achieved last year is that we were able to activate more than 1 Muslims who went and voted in the municipal election last year. That's 1,000 Muslims who voted out of 5,000 who voted in the entire city.
Okay, you can stop right there. That's all accurate that he was talking about. It's all relevant. And it's a problem in this country. It's an important problem that we need to address. We need to fix. We don't have to, I'm sorry, when I say address, we need to fix this. You know, did you ever work a problem, like a math problem, and make a mistake at the beginning of the equation? I did this in blood spatter analysis back when we used, colored string and dowels, and we didn't have computers, but protractors and that kind of stuff. Remember those? Okay. You make a mistake at the beginning, let's say on an angle. If you're just slightly off, man, you are way off when you get to the end. That's the same here. Did you ever think about that? For example, if let's say you're collecting facts, you're doing your research, you're collecting facts, and it's a process of building one fact upon another. But if you, early on, let's say you research and maybe get something wrong, and then from there you keep building like that complex math equation, you could be way off by the time you get to the end. That's why we have to challenge our positions, especially if they don't make sense. I'll toss this in because I know there are a lot of people, the Guthrie investigation. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you might think, well, that's one person that was, if you don't know the story, then don't worry about this, but I'll just say this. If it doesn't make sense, it's built on a lie. And I believe this. You've got incompetence, you've got corruption, which is in that case, which is topical and relevant to all communities. But you also are operating. People spend hours analyzing the case. But if you are wrong initially, or if your initial position for the narrative, the original narrative, is not correct, you're not going to wind up it's just all for naught. I guess what I'm saying is, really analyze and always challenge your positions. That's a very interesting case because my thoughts on that. But my thoughts on that very simply are, if the story is wrong, or there's something wrong. And it's not just incompetence. It's not just political corruption in that sheriff's department. It's not just what didn't happen or did happen in the collection of evidence. It's not any one of those things. It's all of those things, but there is an underlying problem with the narrative, with the story. That's my position. And simply put, you cannot adequately or accurately analyze that case or, what's going on if you're operating on positions or assumptions that are incorrect at the start. Okay. So that I'm using that as an example. All right. So, okay. So, but Islam, yes. But so the questions I asked at the beginning, I'm covering all of these are part of that. You folks brought it up. Islam, threat to the Constitution. How did I know? I didn't know, but I had these clips ready. Give me props for that, will you? Okay. You remember, I played a few minutes of this video some time ago. And I want to play this again. Eric the Tech video 5. I think I played this at the beginning of the episode, but now I looked at this and in contemplating delivering a message to you, the entire message, that's something that would hopefully resonate with everyone. I figured I would wait until now. And thankfully, I'm looking at the program. Thankfully, it's worked out. I don't know how that is, but this is important for us to understand. When you work a problem, going back to the mathematical equation, making a mistake early on puts you, a complex equation puts you way off at the end, right? Well, and carpenters, you know that, right? People that name a profession that uses math, and boy, you make a mistake on square footage, or you measure wrong on whatever you're cutting or whatever. If you make a mistake at the beginning, it's just multiplied and magnified at the end. So, all right. The issue that you and I face more intimately. Now I'm going to appeal to your intimate side, and then after this, and then we're going to wrap it up with the who behind the what. But this is kind of like an intimate you and me, and this is what I would recommend. This is a very interesting and very relevant message to everyone. We're not going to play the entire thing, but it gives you some backstory, gives you some relevance to what's going on today, what's happened in the past, how the past really brought us to where we are today. And this is something I've gone over and over and over, because I question myself. I question things. If I'm called to fight, people want a revolution. If I'm called to fight, and by the way, the communists in this country, they're calling for a revolution. They're calling others to arms. Did you know that? You might hear that, but have you dug deeper into that? You might see people play the audio and video clip of the socialists. You might see it on Drudge or Liberty Daily or whatever, or Citizens Free Press or whatever place you look at. You might find that video clip where we're going to destroy the Constitution. We're calling for a revolution. We're doing Hey, they are, but they're not the only ones. But again, if I'm called to fight against that, I want to know who I'm fighting against. I want to know why, and I just want to know everything I need to know about that. But I also want to know, well, I'll tell you what, without me opining, let's go to video 5. This is, you know this. I know you know this. I know you've seen this before, but I want you to watch this again. You can advance this past the intro, like you can, Eric Tech, maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds in. You know, Chase Hughes, I played this once before, but this is, out of all the videos he's done, this probably relates more to what I'm talking about and probably integrates and helped me to understand many things a lot clearer. And he has other videos. The link to his channel is in the program, or will be in the program description box. The link to this video will be there. Subscribe to him and watch all of his videos if you want. I mean, again, it's up to you. But I think this is important. I think people need to understand. I don't agree with him on certain things. I don't understand him on other things. There's some things I understand him very perfectly. But this did resonate with me, so I'll share it with you. Cut 5.
Life doesn't belong to you. Something is off. Maybe the choices, the emotions, even the arguments in your head aren't really yours. That is not you being paranoid at all. That is the program running. And the crazy part about all of this is it didn't start with your phone. It didn't start with TikTok. It started well over 100 years ago in a quiet office with men in suits mapping out the human mind like a machine that they could rewire. But here's what almost nobody understands. There is a reason that outrage feels addictive. There's a reason that despair feels normal. There's a reason that you wake up with dread and blame yourself for it. It was designed. And the moment you see how, you can't unsee it. So let me rip this open for you. Where did all of this programming really begin? It was a quiet office in London in 1921. This is the Tavistock Institute. They said it was about helping soldiers heal, and it wasn't. And once they cracked all of these things open that they did there, the experiment never ended. Officially, Tavistock was about treating shell shock. This is what they used to call PTSD. It was trauma therapy. It was a beautiful cover story. But what they actually
Can you
found,
pause that just for a second? Because, yeah, thank you. People have said, you know what? You have PTSD. Me. And I had to think about that for a while. I do. I'll admit that. I would venture to say all of you at some level have PTSD. Now, look, back in the day, however you want to say that, you didn't get paid time off, or you didn't get a trip to the psychologist, you went to a bar, you drank, you drank your problem, or you just simply leaned into it, or you compartmentalize. I did a lot of compartmentalizing, and I know you folks do as well. You put your problems, or put that part in a box, and you don't open that box. Do you do that? Just asking. I mean, I've seen some, and you have too. You've been through, the people watching this, I know you've been through some crap. Now, maybe you didn't have, maybe not shell shock from, mortars going bang, boom, and next to you, and seeing people, your friends and the foxhole being blown to bits. but PTSD nonetheless. And I'm not talking about, because you got a bad meal served you at a restaurant. I'm talking about things. People in the chat, family members that are dying, that are sick, that have died, that have been killed. Have you thought about the fact that shell shock is not necessarily an unintended consequence, but a intended consequence? This video, when you watch it and really understand, it addresses that. Now, I'm not talking about things in your life that you cannot, for example, if someone gets sick or there's a car accident or whatever. I'm talking about war. I'm talking about the fentanyl poison. Think about the fentanyl deaths. That's a big thing, right? Fentanyl. I'm very, very intimately, as you well know, I'm intimately familiar with that. But the mode of delivery, the Moscow Mule. You know about that case, Moscow Mule? Is that the one? The delivery, husband died of fentanyl overdose, and he had like a gazillion times the amount of fentanyl in his system. His wife killed him. Not allegedly. I think she was tried and convicted, but the Moscow Mule, that's a drink, right? Forgive me if I got any part of that wrong. But the reason I mention that is because that's the delivery, how the fentanyl got in that person. I'm familiar somewhat with that, because a lot of times, and this is another thing, if you don't challenge your position yourself, if you accept the original narrative, you will build upon, you will be wrong in the end. I'll just say this, kind of like somebody, like a cop responding to a death scene, okay, which happened to me, an overdose, right? My son. And I'm immediately making the assumption, well, okay, drug addict, apparently, overdose, overdose, bang, walks out the door, accepting the narrative, right? Wait a minute. Not so fast. You know the cause of death, but not the manner of death. The manner of death is not what you think. There's five manners of death. 5 manners, 5. Count them, 5. Natural death, homicide, suicide, accident, undetermined. 5. Only 5. Now, the cause, that's something totally different. Why is that important? Because we're looking at the same thing here, aren't we? On a bigger scale. No, I'm not talking about fentanyl. I'm not talking about deaths. I'm talking about the entire evil, the system we're talking about. How easy would it be for you to walk into a place, and using the fentanyl as an example? This person's been known to use drugs. Now, he's been clean or she's been clean, but boy, look, there's a prescription bottle, or there's evidence of drug use, whatever that might be. That's an overdose. What if you're wrong? I've been there. The cause was right, but the manner was not right. The manner might not have been an accidental overdose. So, what if you're wrong? The reason I bring that up, not only because it's very, very important and very close to me, but it exemplifies or it illustrates, I think, how we should address, we should not just assume things based on cursory observations. This video gets into that. My example, my personal experiences, and PTSD included. Same with you. Think back, if you're close to my age, think back over the years and think about how many times maybe you got the initial assumption wrong. Now, I'm not saying you did, but think about that for a minute. Talk about a mind bender. Talk about blowing your mind, right? So what if we're looking at all the problems right now that we face, the threat of Islam, the threat of, for crying out loud, name one, or tune to any podcast and they'll be talking about them, showing videos about them, and I'm okay with that. But what if the root causes are wrong? And you're going to have different assumptions, different narratives for each problem or each issue. What if they're not, or maybe not wrong, but maybe they're not complete? Just saying. If that makes sense, I don't know if that's hitting any buttons of your buttons, but think about that, and think also on a personal level what you thought. Ooh, wait a second. Hey, maybe that wasn't true. Maybe that's not true. Maybe we should look into this a little bit more. Again, my example, my personal experience, I'm telling you, and the greater the threat or the greater the incident, the greater the result, the more impact, the more that needs scrutiny. All right, let's continue with this, Chase Hughes, forward, because this, I'm telling you, this is really important. And I'm very cognizant of the time, but this is extremely important. And by the way, subscribe to his channel if you so desire, and thank him for what he does if you desire. But also, the link to his channel will be under the show notes as well as the link to this video. But I hope you get a lot out of this. Continue with this, please.
It doesn't just break people, it softens them up, makes them pliable. They were not fixing soldiers like they told everybody. They were testing civilians. They were running war psychology on entire populations. Grief, confusion, and fear. Tavistock used all of these things like tools in a toolbox. Once you know which lever makes a herd turn into a stampede, you don't need speeches or ballots anymore. You just pull the lever. So after World War II, Tavistock moves into media and education and government. Its fingerprints are on NATO, PSYOPs, Cold War propaganda, and the actual birth of mass advertising. Then this guy comes on the scene a little later. His name is Edward Bernays, and he's actually Sigmund Freud's nephew, which is super weird. But instead of analyzing dreams and stuff like that, he turned the unconscious into a marketplace. And Edward Bernays is the reason that women smoked in public. He branded cigarettes as torches of freedom for women. He's the reason that we link bacon and eggs with breakfast. It was an ad campaign. It was never a tradition at all. Edward Bernays is the reason that Guatemala's democracy got overthrown. He sold it as fighting communism so that this company called United Fruit could keep their plantations. And he weaponized desire. He made war fashionable. He made democracy emotional. A few years down the road, we have this Operation Mockingbird program that comes out through the CIA. The CIA figured out the easiest way to control a country was by headlines. They thought it was about threats and war and the potential for some kind of bomb being dropped, but it was just headlines and news. That's all you needed to control a whole country. Operation Mockingbird put CIA operatives inside the biggest newsrooms in America, not just whispering in journalists' ears, they were writing the actual stories. Some of them were even newscasters. They were planting every single angle that they were told to plant. And by the 70s, over 400 journalists were on the payroll of the CIA. Anchors, editors, columnists, people that our parents trusted, that were trusted by almost the whole country. So now we've got the CIA's infiltrated the entire news media, and along comes this other program called MK Ultra. The CIA went full-blown mad scientist. They studied these weird experiments on people, some of them even unwilling, that included electroshock therapy and sleep deprivation in high doses of LSD, which is a hallucinogen, and even sensory isolation. It was about breaking minds completely open in the cleanest way that they possibly could. And it was about erasing identity. Keep that in mind. In the 50s, they were becoming experts at erasing people's identity. And in Canada, during this whole thing, this guy named Dr. Ewan Cameron, he ran patients through this thing that he called psychic driving, and he looped recorded messages into their ears while blasting them with drugs and shock therapy until they forgot their own name. And some of the patients there even forgot how to use the bathroom and how to walk and who their family was. When the files leaked in 1970, the public kind of gasped and freaked out. But by then, the experiments were already baked into the military and media playbooks around the entire world. The tools worked exceedingly well, and the ethics to them had no bearing on whether or not they should keep going. Fast forward to today. They used to use pills. Now they use pixels. And the pharmacy they're using is in your brain. It's all your own neurochemicals and your own neurotransmitters being used against you. And the dosage of these things is measured in how many headlines and hashtags and notifications and videos that you see. Tavistock engineered this confusion. Bernays taught them how to sell it. Mockingbird made it gospel to the entire world. And MK Ultra buried the witnesses. So now the experiment
Can you
lab,
pause that for a second and just slide it over? I'll allow it to play out here momentarily. This is why I asked, who do you listen to? Who do you watch? Because here's a discovery I made, and maybe you might say, well, you know what? It's not really a discovery, for crying out loud. If you didn't know this and you're a moron, well, you know what? Maybe I am, in some respects, right? I don't think so, though. But here's what I see happening, and this is why I so value your investment of time by watching the show, by watching this platform. This is why I constantly, one of the biggest concerns I have, or the same concerns you have, okay? I only have so much time in a day. I don't want to be lied to. I want to be able to trust the person I'm listening to. And I want to derive something from my investment of time. And I want to make sure personally that I deliver that. Not a sales pitch of something. I'm not trying. Hey, truth tellers convey. Liars try to convince. Just saying. That's behavior analysis 101. And that's another thing, too, that Hughes and others are part of, is the behavioral analysis, analyzing individuals' behaviors, especially in interviews. And this is something that served me well during my life, during my career as an investigator. I posted once, I don't know, I got my forensic creds back in this, 80s, 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Before DNA, before CODIS, really at the infancy of APHIS even. So, I mean, think about that. Back when there was no cell phones, You had to carry dimes with you in your pocket to be in contact with anyone from a payphone if it worked. And okay, so why are you saying that? Because it's a different world today. And what he just said, from pills to pixels, this is the refinement of pretty much this is the refinement of brainwashing. And my point about this, again, asking about who you listen to. There are people out there that you know are compromised, or you know that have changed positions and are trying to convince you to think a certain way. You can identify those people. You can absolutely, I'm sure every one of you can. You can, or perhaps you're watching people. Some maybe I've had on the show. And those people are falling for the very talking points, the very construct of what you're looking at, and thinking that they're informing you, thinking that they're informed and informing you. Now, this is not to disparage anyone. I'm just saying, watch out for this. Watch out for getting sucked into these arguments that grow increasingly insane by the day or by the month or whatever. Think about that. And like he said, too, about the when you scroll through your media feed, if that's what you do, maybe you don't, and it's one video after another, or you don't even have to do that. Maybe you watch a podcast that will show, oh, look at this outrage, look at this, and it pisses you off. Or it leaves you kind of thinking, oh man, how are we going to get out of this? And that's not wrong, but it's not the entire story. That's what I really want to touch on. And so if you have respectable people that maybe you've met, talked to, admired, that have podcasts, or friends with, or corresponded with, or believe in, or whatever, maybe they, and maybe, well, I'm sure they believe in what they're saying, but why did they believe it? Are they falling for this construct that you're watching here that's an extension of the agenda of the people, well, identifier? Is that what is happening to you? And you may say, well, no, because I know the difference. I know when someone's blowing smoke up my skirt and not. I know when I'm being lied to. I know when I'm being manipulated. Well, a lot of people, think back just a few years ago. Wow. A lot of people fell for all of that. And I'm not saying, maybe none of you did. Probably none of you did, but many people did. Some people, in fact, I was listening to a broadcaster, which was just insane to me about that. Supposedly a conservative broadcaster. Think about this now. A conservative broadcaster. I'm talking about a religious conservative and a political conservative broadcaster. Well, after my fourth booster, I developed, pericarditis. Wow. Just again, think about that, okay? Yet some people are still listening to him. Just saying. All right. Continue with this, or we can finish up with this, and then I'll wrap this up. Go ahead.
Isn't in some weird underground bunker. It's in your frickin' pocket. So on your phone, every swipe, every pause, every time your eyes linger 1 second too long, your nervous system is being mapped out by an algorithm. And it's not for your benefit whatsoever. It's for theirs. Algorithms don't just recommend a bunch of stuff to us, they condition us. And this is beyond proven. They learn what spikes your cortisol, your stress chemicals, what makes you flinch, what makes you pissed off. They feed you more and more until your nervous system belongs to them. You're being taught what to care about, what to hate, what to fear, slowly, without any friction, until the thoughts in your head aren't even yours anymore. Outrage is the cheapest lever you could pull in a human being. That's why everything online is on fire. Doesn't matter what you're mad about, just that you are mad. Because anger glues your eyes to the screen. And while you're locked in reaction mode, something deeper, a lot deeper in your brain is being carved into you. If you look around right now, nobody is okay. Anxiety is baseline. Kids are depressed before they even hit puberty right now. Adults are medicated just to function. And that low dread or that weird feeling in your chest, people call that like personal failure or anxiety. That's the program working exactly as it was designed. A distracted, exhausted, divided population is a population that cannot resist. The mental health crisis is not accidental. It's the exhaust fumes of this machine. So what happens at the end of this? We are all programmed to chase validation and followers and aesthetics and power and status. And even when people hit every single target, what happens? They feel nothing. The system doesn't need you dead. It just needs you numb. It needs you to be busy, blaming yourself until you forget you were anything more than a user profile in some behavior experiment. And if you're still here, something in you already knows. And maybe you can't explain it, and maybe I can't either. I don't think that's paranoia at all. I think it's memory. I think the part of you that never signed the contract is paying attention. It's a part of you that never forgot.
That's the essence. There's only like a closing few seconds. Can you relate to that? Now, I know I've played segments or some of that, most of it's part of that before, right? And you may say, wow, okay, the repetition is a problem. Now, the repetition, in my view, is necessary. It's helpful. It reminds us that what we're hearing, a lot of what we're hearing, we have to be grounded. And one of the things, now he did not mention this, but one of the ways of grounding oneself is through God's word, right? And Steve and I talked about this as well. And by the way, he's going to be on Thursday. But one thing that was not mentioned here, I should add this. That video was made 9 months ago. It's got 2.3, almost 2.4 million views. It's got almost 15,000 comments. It must resonate with someone. But that doesn't answer the evil part of this. Remember, I talked about ponerology. Let's go to cut one. I'm going to wrap this up and then tie it up. And then I want to hear from you in the chat and the comments and such. Tell me if tonight made sense, if it was a worthy investment of your time. Let's go to cut one. There's 7 types of people who create evil societies. Now, this is political ponerology explained. I'm not going to play the whole thing. You can watch the whole thing. I think it's like 30 minutes, so I don't know. But I just want to show you the 7 types of people. When I looked at this and researched this, I'm telling you right now, nailed it. They nailed it. Okay. The man that I mentioned behind go ahead and hit cut one. Here it is.
villain monologue of 1984 near the end when Winston is in the torture room and
no, I don't know. So you got to back that up. That's I must have sent you a
totalitarian regimes.
I mean,
now, this is based off of the work of Andrew Lobachowski, who is a psychiatrist that lived under both the.
Was that the start? I'm sorry. I if that was a start, great. Or that guy. Okay. For some, yeah, it didn't look like the beginning. Okay, this is the beginning. Yeah, thank you. Apparently, sometimes I watch it and then rewatch it and then rewatch it and then, and I send a link that has a time marker in there. So my apologies. So continue. Carry on.
Communists and the Nazis in Poland. And what he recognized was that despite the fact these two groups and two regimes are polar opposites in theory and bitter enemies of one another, they actually operated very similarly, and the people that made up those regimes came from different types of groups, essentially archetypes or characters. And so I have created some drawings to help us understand this. These are your 7 types of people in evil or totalitarian societies. You've got psychopaths, schizoids, spellbinders, the spellbound, conformists, resistors, and bystanders.
Okay, pause that just for a second. I just want to opine here. Did you know schizoid was a thing? I just thought it was a slang. Schizoid. Now, okay. You could say schizophrenic. There's slightly, the schizoid, it's a slightly nuanced thing, okay? But it's a thing. But look at those. Look at that picture. Look at that drawing of the types. Let me just find that here, as I did make some notes of that from that. Look at those types. Okay, where did I put that? Okay, here it is. Sorry about that. The 7 types of people who create evil. That's the subject or the title of this video. But that is also the societal political truth, I suppose. Again, political is the operative word here. This is political ponerology. And this is where the majority of broadcasters are at. This is where we are at. In fact, a lot of our conversations here on this broadcast stop here. Yes, psychopaths, schizoids, and spellbinders, and spellbound people, and then conformists, and then the resistors, and then the bystanders. We've talked about the bystander effect, didn't we? Remember that program? We talk about psychopaths all the time. But did you notice that word up there, that modifier? It's really not, it's a modifier, I suppose. Political ponerology. Are we talking about the real issue here? I guess one can argue, yeah, we are. Now, what happens in this video, just so you know, what happens in this video, it's broken down, and this man, using the author, the creator of this ponerology, the man who did this lived under the communists, lived under the Nazis and the communists. That's a bad day. It's a crappy, month, right? Or lifetime. Talking about bad hands being dealt to you. Oof. But, so he explained that. The 7 types of people who create evil societies. He explained that. But notice that modifier, a very important modifier in that drawing there by this, again, whoever's doing this video, Liam DeBoer and Blender News. Fantastic expose about the 7 types of people who create evil societies. Because you and I, you tune in the broadcast to listen about these. We talk about these types of people, don't we? We do. We know. In fact, Fauci, talk about him, don't we? And Burks and all the other psychopaths, Gates, psychopaths. You got to be a psychopath. And then you've got the conformists. Yeah, okay, all right. Social distance, yep. Mm-hmm. And then the people who are spellbound, who, man, get away from me. 6 feet, get away. Or if you haven't gotten your shot, then you're endangering grandma. You're a grandma killer. And then the people who spellbind you, you can see them all right there. And folks, watch that entire video. Okay, real quick, because I'm going to wrap this up. Because you got things to do, right? What's the bottom line here? Before I ask more questions of you, the listener, you, the viewer, let's go to, hang on, hold on. Let's go to video 2. Because at its core, this is what we need to be looking at, in my view. About Eric the Tech, if you can skip the stuff at the beginning, you know what I'm talking about. Just kind of go, where is it here? And fire when ready. I don't know, somewhere about it'd be about the 16 seconds. Go ahead and start at 16 seconds. Here it is.
Imagine walking down the street, passing by ordinary people, each with their own stories, their own lives. But what if beneath the surface, some of those people harbored a darkness you couldn't see? What if the real monsters aren't lurking in the shadows, but are hidden in plain sight, disguised as friends, colleagues, or even loved ones? In this video, we're diving deep into the composition of evil, uncovering how ordinary people can transform into perpetrators of evil, and more importantly, how you can recognize the signs before it's too late. Stay tuned, because what you're about to learn could change the way you see the world and protect you from the darkness that sometimes lies within.
Okay, can you pause that and just push me over there, or push that over for a second? Because I want to just talk to you folks about this. Can you relate what you just heard there and saw there? Can you relate to that? I'll bet you can. 100. You know what? Let me ask the chat, you guys and gals. What do you think? Can you relate to that? Yeah. Because how people become evil. The title of this video, by the way, is The Lucifer Effect. Can you relate to that? In your life, man, I'll tell you what, I thought I was like the only one. You know somebody, and all of a sudden you find out they're the Zodiac killer. No, but you get the idea, right? How am I doing? Chat, real time. Are you getting the message here? Are you feeling it? Or am I just, do I need to go home? Thank you, Steelers Mom, for... See, this is a responsibility I think we all have. And if we don't understand that we're listening to someone who's trying to convince rather than convey. If we're watching someone who's spellbound, or if we're watching a spellbinder, or if, again, the 7 types, right, of the, then we have a problem. Or if we're just watching it happen, we're part of the problem. But then the encompassing layer and level is the Lucifer effect, the evil. It's not, I mean, we know the psychopaths. We know, but you ever wonder? Somebody you know, all of a sudden they're, evil? Were they born that way? You know the old argument, nature or nurture? Just asking. All right. So we'll play another minute of this, and then we'll wrap this up. You guys can go do what you need to do, and we'll be back tomorrow. But I hope I'm hitting the right notes. And I would urge everyone, these videos that I show, go ahead and support, subscribe, thumbs up, whatever, all of these, if you so desire. Okay. This is their work product. I'm just calling attention to it and saying, look, there's a point right here that I think we all need to pay attention to. So we'll just run this another minute or so, but then on your own, finish it out. But go ahead.
The question of how ordinary people can commit extraordinary acts of evil has long puzzled psychologists, philosophers, and historians. In his book, The Lucifer Effect, Understanding How Good People Turn Evil, psychologist Philip Zimbardo offers a profound exploration of this troubling phenomenon, drawing from his infamous Stanford prison experiment and a wealth of psychological research. The lessons from his work shed light on the complex interplay between individuals and their environments, offering crucial insights into how and why people can descend into darkness. The power of situations. One of the central themes of Zimbardo's work is the overwhelming power of situational forces. While we often like to think that our actions are driven solely by our morals and personality traits, Zimbardo argues that the environment can be a far stronger influence. In certain situations, even well-intentioned individuals can find themselves acting in ways that contradict their core values. This is evident in the Stanford prison experiment, where students assigned to play the role of guards began to exhibit abusive behaviors towards their fellow students playing prisoners. These guards were not inherently evil, rather the experiment's toxic environment fostered these behaviors. Dehumanization, the first step towards evil. Dehumanization is another key factor in how people become evil. When individuals or groups are perceived as less than human, it becomes easier to justify cruelty against them. This process often involves labeling, stereotyping, and creating an us versus them mentality. Throughout history, dehumanization has been a precursor to atrocities, from genocides to systemic oppression. By stripping away the humanity of others, perpetrators can distance themselves from the moral implications of their actions.
Okay, you can stop that, completely stop that right there. Dehumanization, and I just want to stop here, address this, and then wrap this up. This is kind of a side issue, but have you noticed, folks, have you noticed the dehumanization in progress right now against Christians, against Jews, against people of certain political, I'm talking about conservatives, okay, in general. What's the core? What's the common aspect of all of that? That dehumanization. It's the Lucifer effect. Now you can watch this video, and I recommend you do. But here is where I'm going to leave you all. I learned a lot. I'm learning a lot every day. I don't know half of what I should know. But what I know. Not what I think I know, but what I know. Now, there's also faith. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about what I know, I'm talking about what I believe. And faith in God. But I don't need to know all of the stuff with God. I don't need to know because I have faith. I don't need to know pre-trib, post-trib. I don't need to know that because I have faith. And I know you do too. And if you don't, when you get on your knees tonight, and if you don't get on your knees, no, look, if you got bad knees, I get it. If you can't get back up, don't do that. Believe me, don't do that. But when you mentally get on your knees or physically get on your knees and pray to the God of heaven, to the God of the Bible, that is the common element. That is the, I got to tell you, that's the positive news. You don't need to know anything except you just have to have faith in God. But also understand that having that faith will put a target on your back. And the target is by the seven types of people. Even the bystanders, right? They don't do anything. They're part of the problem. But going back a little bit, the conveyors of lies, whether they know it because they're attempting to convince, not convey, but whether they know it or not, that's a problem that we have to watch out for. But the common element, just as your faith is the common good news, God bless, I love this because this is what I believe and I know how the book ends. I know how this life, I know how this ends. Just as how sure we are there. We have this other element over here that we fight every day. That you know what? We think we know. We think we know because we listen to people we trust, right? But we did that before. How'd that work out for some of us? And then maybe that person or the people that maybe you know somebody maybe personally. They're in your life. They're broadcasting or they're whatever. And all of a sudden, they go evil. Wow. That's the Lucifer effect. Here's my bottom line point. If you invest time, invest your time, invest it wisely. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to do any of that. But you know what? I'm glad you are because I'm again, like I said, I'm learning all the time. But here's my parting thought. Kind of how we got into this, my opening thought. We must challenge our own positions in terms of the facts, not faith. Facts, not faith. Well, you can challenge, you do it with faith, but I guess it's not really faith if you, I don't know. I'm not a religious scholar. I'm not a scholar at all. But do you understand what I mean? And overlay this, the facts, the high points of this. this episode with everyone you listen to, all of your interactions, some of your actions, and tell me if this doesn't resonate with you. Tell me if I made sense. Did I make sense? I'm going to add, another minute. Chat, did it make sense? Just curious. All right. Yeah. And again, I'm about 10 seconds behind on the chat. So look, I love all of you guys. And I have to say, Thursday, tomorrow program, but Thursday, Steve Quill, hopefully nothing blows up, nothing collapses, throughout. And it won't. I don't, because I have faith, but, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Steve Quill is going to be on. Again, we got stuff planned. You guys, it's going to blow your mind. Telling you. The AI, which you didn't hear on any video, the AI issue. The AI, how it connects to the Nazis, how the Nazis connect to the alien UAP stuff, and the things that Steve mentioned too. Hagmann, Gene Hagmann, the tunnels. You might say, well, wait a second, that's been debunked. No. Oh, we got some stuff planned. So, bear with us. Bear with me. Stay with us. I promise it's going to be worth it. Folks, God bless everyone. Thank you, and forgive me for my misstep in not telling you guys. Good Lord. You'd think I'd learn, but nah, here I am. All right, Eric Tech, thank you very much, folks. Thank you all. God bless you. If this resonated, hey, give me a thumbs up. And if it didn't, don't. God bless everyone. Have a good night.